Hey guys, how you going? Okay, what happened yesterday? I was going to go live, except that I coughed so much I gave myself a headache. You know that one? When the flu goes from your nose down to your chest? Well, that's what happened, and that's why I didn't do one yesterday. And I'm doing a recording today, just in case, because I feel it's still there. Okay, and I'm getting plenty of water, plenty of fluids. I think it's just part of the flu, and I probably just did something coughing so much. Anyway, let's get on to Twitter Files Part 9. This is pretty interesting, actually. Matt Taibbi said, number 1, thread the Twitter Files, Twitter and other government agencies. After weeks of Twitter Files reports detailing close coordination between the FBI and Twitter in moderating social media content, the Bureau issued a statement on Wednesday. It didn't refute allegations, instead it decried conspiracy theorists publishing misinformation whose sole aim is to discredit the agency, which we read. The men and women of the FBI work every day to protect the American public. It's unfortunate that conspiracy theorists and others are feeding the American public misinformation with the sole purpose of attempting to discredit the agency. No, they pretty much did that themselves. They must think us unambitious if our sole aim is to discredit the FBI. After all, a whole range of government agencies discredit themselves in the Twitter Files. Why stop with one? Exactly. The files show the FBI acting as doorman to a vast program of social media surveillance and censorship, encompassing agencies across the federal government, from the State Department to the Pentagon to the CIA. Who had this? Who had bets up for this one? I sure did. I knew it. Anyway, the operation is far bigger than the reported 80 members of the Foreign Influence Task Force, the FITF, which also facilitates requests from a wide array of smaller actors, from local cops to media to state governments. I bet you Australia's doing it too. Matt Taibbi said Twitter had so much contact with so many agencies that executives lost track. Is today the DOD and tomorrow the FBI? Is it the weekly call or the monthly meeting? It was dizzying. For DOD? No, that's a different group. We'll reply to that in a second. Yol, should the prep call be you and starts with an S, ends with an E? And blank? There's a lot of blanks there. All here. Okay. Hope you're doing well. Would it be possible for you to add blank and blank to the invite for the monthly USG industry call? Thanks. A chief end result was that thousands of official reports flowed to Twitter from all over through the FITF and the FBI's San Francisco field office. On June the 29th, 2020, San Francisco FBI agent Elvis Chan wrote to pair of Twitter execs asking if he could invite an OGA to an upcoming conference. Stasia, I want to follow up to see if I could forward this invitation to an OGA, specifically the people from Blank's former employer were inquiring. Hope all is well. OGA or other government organisation can be a euphemism for CIA, according to multiple former intelligence officials and contractors. Chuckles one, they think it's mysterious, but it's just conspicuous. Other government agency, the place where I worked for 27 years, said retired CIA officer Ray McGovern. It was an open secret at Twitter that one of its executives was ex-CIA, which is why Chan referred to that executive's former employer. The first Twitter executive abandoned any pretense to stealth and emailed that employee. Used to work for the CIA, so that's Elvis' question. Stasia, I have no involvement here. I leave this to you to respond. Blank used to work for the CIA, so that is Elvis' question. Senior legal executive Stasia Cardil, whose alertness stood out among Twitter leaders, replied, I know, and I thought my silence was understood. Cardil then passes on conference details to recently hired ex-FBI lawyer Jim Baker. Sunlight conference tomorrow, no need for you to attend. Carnegie is doing the heavy lift. I offered to assist Nick and Yol, but there are no academic papers to review or anything. I was involved in the early scoping of the joint project as well. I invited the FBI and I believe that the CIA will virtually attend too. Please let me know if you have any questions. I invited the FBI and the CIA virtually will attend too, Cardille says to Baker, adding pointedly, no need for you to attend. The government was in constant contact with not just Twitter, but virtually every major tech firm. These included Facebook, Microsoft, Verizon, Reddit, even Pinterest, and many others. Industry players also held regular meetings with our government. I'm sure they did. One of the most common forums was a regular meeting of the multi-agency Foreign Influence Task Force, attended by spates of executives, FBI personnel, and nearly always one or two attendees marked OGA. So there's two of them marked OGA, most of them FBI, OGC, other government thing. The FITF meeting agendas virtually always included, at or near the beginning, an OGA briefing, usually about foreign matters. Hold that thought. OGA briefings. OGA briefings, OGA briefings. Software and influence campaign against Ukraine. Despite its official remit being foreign influence, the FITF and the SFFBI office became conduits for mountains of domestic moderation requests from state governments, even local police. Hi Stasia, FBI Minneapolis requested that I put you in touch with Lieutenant Hoff about some recent activities which I've provided below. I'll let the two of you take it from here. And it shows one person's Twitter, couple of Twitter posts. Oh, where'd that go? One sec, guys, I've got to get back to it. Okay, I'm back to it. Many requests arrive via Teleporter, a one-way platform in which many communications were timed to vanish. You have been granted download access to Teleporter. The links will be valid until Thursday, November the 5th. Blah, blah, blah. San Francisco election threat intel. Especially as the election approached in 2020, the FITF FBI overwhelmed Twitter with requests, sending lists of hundreds of problem accounts. Is anyone else waiting for their name to come up? I still can't get into my old one, Hev123 Truthseeker. Email after email came from the San Francisco office heading into the election, often adorned with an Excel attachment. Hello, hi Stacia. Our FBI Baltimore identified these Twitter handles and tweets which appear to prove misleading information on time, place or manner of voting in the upcoming elections. We believe these may violate your terms of service and want to bring them to your attention. We would appreciate any feedback you have regarding this matter. Thanks. Regards, Elvis. There were so many government requests, Twitter employees had to improvise a system for prioritizing, triaging them. Hi, blank, hope you're both well. Wanted to reach out about election-related escalations. As you know, with the adoption of unified escalation tool and the depreciation of the Go elections escalations, we have been sending all election-related requests directly to get support for review. We are having some issues with the backlog impacting our elections efforts. The folks on this email represent the DC, public policy, legal and comms team working on elections. Generally, we are the ones escalating the high priority content, whether it's high profile or coming directly from governmental partners. Specifically pub policy, and I escalate reports from the FBI, Department of Homeland Security and state election officials, or the election integrity project run by Alex Stamos. Comms escalates a lot of content tied to press inquiries about election issues. Is there some way we can figure out an accommodation to prioritise the reports we escalate, particularly in light of the depreciation of Go elections escalations? Although every tweet is valued, I believe it is likely that our reports are the most credible and most urgent, at least for next week. Really appreciate any assistance or guidance you can provide. Thanks, Stasia. The FBI was clearly tailoring searches to Twitter's policies. FBI complaints were almost always depicted somewhere as a possible terms of service violation, even in the subject line. There you go. Twitter executives noticed the FBI appearing to assign personnel to look for Twitter violations. They have some folks in the Baltimore field office and HQ that are just doing keyword searches for violations. This is probably the 10th request I've dealt with in the last 5 days, remarked Cardill. I never typically include a huge distribution on it because there really wasn't a need for this kind of visibility. Let me know if you have any other questions. Even ex-FBI lawyer Jim Baker agreed, odd that they are searching for violation of our policies. The New York FBI office even sent requests for the user IDs and handles of a long list of accounts named in a Daily Beast article. Senior executives say they are supportive and completely comfortable doing so. Wow. Yoel Roth, RE the article and names associated with NYO Twitter request, re-upping our internal discussions, any objections to sending the list of user IDs and handles. I'm comfortable doing so. Wow. It seemed to strike no one as strange that Foreign Influence Task Force was forwarding thousands of mostly domestic reports, along with the DHS about the fringiest material. Biden using scorecard and the hammer to still, just like Biden, just like Obama and Biden. Wow, that's interesting. Supercomputer system known as the Hammer. The Hammer includes an exploit application known as Scorecard that is capable. Ooh, okay. Foreign meddling had been the ostensible justification for expanding moderation since platforms like Twitter were dragged to the Hill by the Senate in 2017. Yet behind the scenes, Twitter executives struggled against government claims of foreign interference supposedly occurring on their platforms and others. FITF referral, IRA account on Reddit, status closed, Project Unified escalations, security level SI restricted. The Twitter files show execs under constant pressure to validate theories of foreign influence and unable to find evidence for key assertions. Found no links to Russia, says one analyst, but suggests he could brainstorm to find a stronger connection. Oh, great. After I reviewed the accounts and found no links to Russia, I asked blank on this ticket, blank, and this was his answer. Thanks for tagging in the workflow. From my cheeks, I could not find any indicators to suggest that the account blank is Russian. Even the other phone-linked accounts blank does not have any indicators to suggest it's a Russian proxy. Did checks via domain tools for IP resolves and email checks for OSINT. However, going by the content and narrative coming out from the account is definitely pro-Russian and or could be a Russian proxy. I can brainstorm with blank and see if we can dig even deeper to try and find a stronger connection. Extremely tenuous circumstantial chance of being related, says another. Looked into this here, didn't find any exact naming matches and really any information to link the Reddit accounts to any on-platform presence at Twitter. There was one account that is an incredibly tenuous circumstantial chance of being related, so documenting the account here just in case we ever need to come back to it. Created in a similar time frame, RU login, sus English name. No real matches using the info, says former Trust and Safety Chief Yoel Roth in another case, noting some links were clearly Russian, but another was a house rental in South Carolina. Oh dear. Wow. Yoel Roth, not really anything worth talking about, but there are two personas linked to two clusters they might be interested in. Both appear to be Russian-like names. However, I wouldn't even call that a slam dunk since it was based on IP data, and I think at least one of the returned accounts form the IP data doesn't look at all related. In another case, Roth concludes a series of Venezuelan pro-Maduro accounts are unrelated to Russia's Internet Research Agency because they're too high volume. Uncharacteristic of a lot of the other IRA agency. The Venezuelans were extremely high volume tweeters, pretty uncharacteristic of a lot of other IRA activity, Roth says. In a key email, news that the State Department was making a wobbly public assertion of Russian influence led an exec, same one with the OGA pass, to make a damning admission. Due to a lack of technical evidence on our end, I've generally left it be, waiting for more evidence, he says. Our window in that is closing, given that government partners are becoming more aggressive on attribution. Yep, InfoBricks is an entity that we've received previous notice on, though if recollection services government partners have never been so specific as to say it was directly controlled by the GRU. BRICS is an inherently Russian-dominated economic organisation, so it was always likely that a website and Twitter account designed to promote it would be directed by the Kremlin. Due to a lack of technical evidence on our end, I've generally left it be, waiting for more evidence. I think our window on that is closing, blah blah blah. Rebel Inside was a new one for me too, not even sure what the goal of the account could be, other than to highlight unrest in other areas of the world besides Russia. I've already suspended it and marked it as domain as unsafe. And the translation, more aggressive government partners had closed Twitter's windows of independence. Other government agencies ended up sharing intelligence through the FBI and FITF, not just with Twitter, but with Yahoo, Twitch, Cloudflare, LinkedIn, and even Wikimedia. Former CIA agent and whistleblower John Kiriakou believes he recognises the formatting of these reports. Looks right on to me, Kiriakou says, noting that what was cut off above the tear line was the originating CIA office and all the copied offices. Many people wonder if internet platforms receive direction from intelligence agencies about moderation of foreign policy news stories. It appears Twitter did, in some cases by way of the FITF and FBI. These reports are far more factually controversial than domestic counterparts. One Intel report lists accounts tied to Ukraine neo-Nazi propaganda. This includes assertions that Joe Biden helped orchestrate a coup in 2014 and put his son on the board of Burisma. Another report asserts a list of accounts accusing the Biden administration of corruption in vaccine distribution, a part of a Russian influence campaign. Often intelligence came from the form of brief reports followed by long lists of accounts simply deemed to be pro-Maduro, pro-Cuba, pro-Russia, etc. This one batch had over 1,000 accounts marked for digital execution. Great. They're all blanked out, so you can't see them anyway. One report said a site documenting purported rights abuses committed by Ukrainians is directed by Russian agents. Oh dear. Intel about the shady origin of these accounts might be true, but so might at least some of the information in them about neo-Nazis, rights abuses in Donbass, even about our own government. Should we block such material? This is a difficult speech dilemma. Should the government be allowed to try and prevent Americans and others from seeing pro-Maduro or anti-Ukraine accounts? Often Intel reports are just long lists of newspapers, tweets or YouTube videos guilty of anti-Ukraine narratives. Sometimes, not always, Twitter and YouTube block the accounts. By now we know for sure what Roth meant by the Bureau, an extension of the IC. Hi team, the questions we received are attached. I'm frankly perplexed by the requests here, which seem more like something we get from a congressional committee than the Bureau. There's a big discussion to be had about state-controlled media, which will be impacted by the label launch later this month. But I'm not particularly comfortable with the Bureau and, by way of extension, the IC, demanding written answers here. What's your perspective on how best to navigate it? Thanks, Yoel. The line between misinformation and distorting propaganda is thin. Are we comfortable with so many companies receiving so many reports from a more aggressive government? The CIA has yet to comment on the nature of its relationship to tech companies like Twitter. Twitter had no input into anything I did or wrote. The searches were carried out by third parties, so what I saw could be limited. Watch Barry Weiss, Schellenberger MD, IH Fang in this space for more on issues ranging from COVID to Twitter's relationship with Congress and more. Now I'm going to look, because there is a part 10, so I'm going to go and look for that, and I'll be back in 1 second. Okay, thread by David Swig. The Twitter files, how Twitter rigged the COVID debate. By censoring info that was true but inconvenient to the US government policy, by discrediting doctors and other experts who disagreed, by suppressing ordinary users, including some sharing the CDC's own data. So far, the Twitter files are focused on evidence of Twitter's secret blacklists, how the company functioned as kind of a subsidiary of the FBI, and how execs rewrote the platform's rules to accommodate their own political desires. What we have yet to cover is COVID. The reporting for the Free Press, the FP, is one piece of that important story. The United States government pressured Twitter and other social media platforms to elevate certain content and suppress other content about COVID. The internal files at Twitter that I viewed while on assignment for the FP showed that both the Trump and Biden administrations directly pressed Twitter executives to moderate the platform's pandemic content according to their wishes. At the onset of the pandemic, according to the meeting notes, the Trump admin was especially concerned about panic buying. They came looking for help from the tech companies to combat misinformation about runs on grocery stores. But there were runs on grocery stores. Yeah, that's because the media started that. Do you know that? By reporting, that made everyone go out and buy toilet paper. At least here in Australia, okay? Areas focused include conspiracies around 5G cell towers, runs on grocery stores, and misinformation that could stoke panic buying and behaviours. Coverage here, documents here and here. Now, this says the Trump administration, okay? He had a lot of deep state working in there. I'm not saying that's why, but I also want to say about this 5G, okay? A few years ago, we found out that this technology can be used for good or bad. And currently, the deep state want to use it for bad. So I'll leave that up to you. You have your own opinion. Everyone has their own opinion. I'm keeping my mind open on that because I do know that the tech can be used for good or it can be used really badly like we're seeing. It wasn't just Twitter. The meetings with the Trump White House were also attended by Google, Facebook, Microsoft and others. Okay, some of the companies, not Twitter, gathered open source information from researchers. Our teams fed this information to the Twitter policy enforcement teams. When the Biden admin took over, one of their first meeting requests with Twitter execs was on COVID. The focus was on anti-vaxxer accounts, especially Alex Berenson. In the summer of 2021, President Biden said social media companies were killing people for allowing vaccine misinformation. Berenson was suspended hours after Biden's comments and kicked off the platform the following month. Berenson sued and then settled with Twitter. In the legal process, Twitter was compelled to release certain internal communications which showed direct White House pressure on the company to take action on Berenson. At a December 2022 summary of meetings with the White House by Lauren Culbertson, Twitter's head of US public policy, adds new evidence of the White House's pressure campaign and cements that it repeatedly attempted to directly influence the platform. Culbertson wrote that Biden team was very angry that Twitter had not been more aggressive in deplatforming multiple accounts. They wanted Twitter to do more. The Twitter executives did not fully capitulate to the Biden's team's wishes. An extensive review of internal communications at the company reveal employees often debating moderation cases in great detail and with more care than was shown by the government toward free speech. But Twitter did suppress views, many from doctors and scientific experts, that conflicted with the official positions of the White House. As a result, legitimate findings and questions that would have expanded the public debate went missing. There were three serious problems with Twitter's process. First, much of the content moderation was conducted by bots, trained on machine learning and AI, impressive in their engineering, yet still too crude for such nuanced work. Second, contractors in places like the Philippines also moderated content. They were given decision trees to aid in the complex process, but tasking non-experts to adjudicate tweets on complex topics like myocarditis and mask efficacy data was destined for a significant error rate. And that was it. They had this little drop-down box with all these things in it that they could pick. Third, most importantly, the buck stopped with higher-level employees at Twitter who chose the inputs for the bots and decision trees and subjectively decided escalated cases and suspensions. As it is with all people and institutions, there was individual and collective bias. With COVID, this bias bent heavily towards establishment dogmas. Inevitably, dissident yet legitimate content was labelled as misinformation, and the accounts of doctors and others were suspended, both for tweeting opinions and demonstrably true information. Exhibit A, Dr. Martin Kulldorff, an epidemiologist at Harvard Medical School, tweeted views at odds with US public health authorities and the American left, the political affiliation of nearly the entire staff at Twitter. He was just saying children don't need it. People with previous infection didn't need it. Internal emails showed intent to action by a moderator saying Kulldorff's tweets violated the company's COVID misinformation policy and claimed he shared false information. But Kulldorff's statement was an expert's opinion, one which also happened to be in line with the policies in numerous other countries, the vaccine policies, yet it was deemed false information by Twitter moderators merely because it differed from CDC guidelines. After Twitter took action, Kulldorff's tweet was slapped with a misleading label and all replies and likes were shut off, throttling the tweet's ability to be seen and shared by many people, the ostensible core function of the platform. In my review of internal files, I found countless instances of tweets labelled as misleading or taken down entirely, sometimes triggering account suspensions simply because they veered from CDC guidance or differed from establishment views. A tweet by Kelly KGA, a self-proclaimed public health fact-checker with 18,000 followers, was flagged as misleading and replies and likes disabled, even though it displayed the CDC's own data. Oh dear. Internal records showed that a bot had flagged the tweet and that it received many tattles, what the system amusingly calls reports from users. That triggered a manual review by a human who, despite the tweet showing actual CDC data, nevertheless labelled it misleading. Was that someone from overseas? Tellingly, the tweet by Kelly KGA that was labelled misleading was a reply to a tweet that contained actual information. COVID has never been the leading cause of death from disease in children, yet tweet remains on the platform without a misleading label. There you go. Whether by humans or algorithms, content that was contrarian but true was still subjected to getting flagged or suppressed. This tweet was labelled misleading even though the owner of this account, a physician, was referring to the results of a published study. Dear me. Andrew Boston, a Rhode Island physician, was permanently suspended from Twitter after receiving multiple strikes for misinformation. One of his strikes was for a tweet referring to the results from a peer-reviewed study on mRNA. Oh dear. A review of Twitter log files revealed that an internal audit conducted after Boston's attorney contacted Twitter found that only one of Boston's 5 violations were valid. They have rescinded their suspension. Also, they've left a pin note on the account to ensure that before any enforcement action be taken against this account, it will be subject for review by site integrity. We'll also remove the annotations on the marked tweet as a no vio. The one Boston tweet found to still be in violation cited data that was legitimate but inconvenient to the public health establishment's narrative about the risks of flu versus COVID in children. This tweet was not only flagged by a bot, but its violation manually affirmed by a staff member as telling of both the algorithmic and human bias at play. Boston's account was suspended for months and was finally restored on Christmas Day. Another example of human bias run amok was the reaction to this tweet by Trump. Many Trump tweets led to extensive internal debates, and this one was no different. He said, "I'll be leaving the Great Walter Reed Medical Centre today at 6:30, feeling really good. Don't be afraid of COVID. Don't let it dominate your life. We've developed, under the Trump administration, some really great drugs and knowledge. I feel better than I did 20 years ago." I think that was pretty much after having HCQ. In a surreal exchange, Jim Baker, at the time Twitter's Deputy General Counsel, asked why telling people not to be afraid wasn't a violation of Twitter's COVID misinformation policy. Yoel Roth, Twitter's former head of trust and safety, had to explain that optimism wasn't misinformation. Remember Kelly KGA with a CDC data tweet? Twitter's response to her is clarifying, we will prioritise the review and labelling of content that could lead to increased exposure or transmission. Thanks for getting back to us about the labelling of a tweet. Our teams are using and improving internal systems to proactively monitor content related to COVID. These systems help ensure we're not amplifying tweets with these warnings or labels and detecting the high visibility content quickly. Additionally, we'll continue to rely on trusted partners to identify content that is likely to result in offline harm. Given the dynamic situation, we will prioritise review and labelling of content that could lead to increased exposure of transmission. Blah, blah. Whoopsie, dear me. Honestly, this is BS. Twitter made a decision via the political leanings of senior staff and government pressure that the public health authorities' approach to the pandemic, prioritising mitigation over other concerns, was the science. Information that challenged that view, such as showing harms of the jabs or that could be perceived as downplaying the risks of COVID, especially to children, was subject to moderation and even suppression, no matter whether such views were correct or adopted abroad. What might this pandemic and its aftermath have looked like if there had been more open debate on Twitter and other social media platforms, not to mention the mainstream press, about the origins of COVID, about lockdowns, about the true risks of COVID in kids, and much more? Thanks to Schellenberger, Elwood House, IAH Fang and the team, the FP, for their help reporting this story. An expanded version of the thread is available. Wow. I think we knew most of this anyway, because look, my last channel got deleted for medical disinformation, so they said. And I wasn't lying. It wasn't disinfo. My whole channel got wiped out because of that. So, yeah. And then my Twitter, main Twitter account I'm locked out. It's still there. I'm locked out of it. So who knows? Anyway, guys, you can let me know what you think of this. I think I'm up to date. I hope I'm up to date. Oh dear, I meant to come on yesterday, guys. I've still got a little bit of it. It's not bad now. I can breathe through my nose, but it's gone into my chest. So I'll be all right. I feel great. I'm taking a lot of vitamin C, so it should be fine. And plus, I'm looking after my grandchildren tonight. They're coming up. So I may or may not be able to do a video tomorrow. I'll have to see how long they stay for. Anyway, guys, I hope you have a good morning, afternoon or evening wherever you are. Much love to all of you, and I will talk to you soon. Okay, guys, bye.
I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago.